And I wanted to tell you why. When we were talking about the $700 billion bailout, I just asked a simple question. Where's the $350 billion we gave to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? Can anybody tell me? I had the Secretary of Treasury, I had the head of the Fed, and all these guys that were supposed to know all this stuff. And they never even tried to answer that question. And I said, so you run in here and tell us in 24 hours we got to spend $700 billion, and you can't tell us where a nickel of our $350 billion is that we spent in August? Well, don't be concerned about that. It's in the system and it's working. I mean, that's not, I don't know about you, but, you know, I like Tim, but I wouldn't give him $100 if he wouldn't tell me what he was going to do with it. Okay? So that's the start of it, and quite frankly, that's what you as Americans should be concerned about. Is accountability is an issue that we have got real problems with as we spend these kind of numbers. And so that's why until they figure out how to account for this stuff, they're not even going to come close to getting me to vote for it. The last thing we passed, by the way, was, and you've heard the president say that this is not really his spending bill, it's the other guy's spending bill. Well, in a way he's right, in a way he's wrong. What happened was, this is part of what we do in the appropriations bill. We have 13 appropriations bills we passed. We had 11. We were 11 short in December. We had 11 of them we hadn't passed. The reason we hadn't passed is because the majority had raised the amount of spending by $23 billion, and Bush said he would veto it. So instead of passing those last 11, they just held them. And that's what the omnibus bill that we just passed this week was. That was the spending appropriations from last year. They waited until they got rid of Bush so that he wouldn't veto them. So that's what the omnibus is about. All of this we've got to be concerned about, but in turn, we can work our way out of this. Private enterprise will get us out of this if we give them a chance. There's a couple of things you don't need to know about that you need to be writing, not only me. You're welcome to write me, but I can tell you how I'm going to vote. But this carbon tax thing that they're coming down on has the potential to be a real nightmare. Right now it's estimated it will cost every human being in America $3,300 a year in extra taxes. And it's going to be the kind of taxes you're not going to see. Because basically it's going to say anybody that's causing a carbon emission of any sort by burning a carbon fuel, they're going to pay a tax on it. If they don't want to pay it, and that tax is going to go out and be allowed to buy a carbon credit for somebody who has a tree. So it's like, well, it's sort of like that, okay? So if you got half of East Texas, you got a carbon credit, a bunch of carbon credits you can sell because trees eat carbon dioxide. So then if you get folks over here at Fort Hood that are driving a bunch of tanks out on the range and burning lots of fuel, they're going to need to buy carbon credits from you over in East Texas. It's going to be a good deal for you, except the money's going to pass through the government both ways. You know what happens when money passes through the government both ways, right? So, but that's what this cap and trade in a real simple. It's much more complex than that, but in a real simple form, that's what it is. If you're saving on carbon emissions, you can sell the savings to the guy who's spending carbon emissions. But all that's going to be taxed and it moves both ways. And then that tax, so if these close, one of the things our truckers like to say, and you can look at each other and around this room, they say, look around this room. Everything except you was brought to us by diesel. And you know, think about it. Your clothes, the food we ate, floor covering, the paint, the light fixtures all came in a truck or a train powered by diesel. All that would be taxed. Because all that would have a carbon tax that the consumer would have to pay. So these are the things that we've got to be keeping an eye on as we move forward. The bottom line is Americans will put other Americans back to work if we get off their back. And I think there is starting to be, with the blue dogs on the other side of the aisle, more and more people starting to say, wait a minute, maybe we ought to try encouraging industry and small business with our tax structure so that we can produce real jobs and real retirements and have real wages out there. And so keep your fingers crossed and your prayers going up, because that's the real future for getting out of this mess.